Okay, hi everybody. I am BJ. I'm the Genealogy Specialist at the State Library. And today I'm going to talk about using the State Library's catalog and how you can find materials and where they are. So the catalog is called URSUS. It includes the State Library, the Bangor Public Library, and the University of Maine system, and as well as the Maine State Archives and the State Law and Legislative Library. Most public libraries in Maine are part of Minerva, which is a separate joint catalog like this. Portland's on its own, as are Colby, Bates, and Bowdoin, but all of those, the ones that are on their own, URSUS and Minerva, feed into a bigger system called Maine Cat, which I'm not sure we'll be able to get into today because they have parts of this shut down with the way we have interlibrary loan within the state not working at the moment. But we'll get to that when I try to go to it. You can search the catalog from the start page by keyword, title, or author. Title and author are pretty obvious. With title, if you have something that has a subtitle, I tend to only type in the part before the colon or hyphen or whatever separates the subtitle from the title, just because the longer you go on the title, the more likely it is that the whole thing hasn't been entered and you won't get it as an answer. I often start with keyword because I'm looking by a topic, and keyword searches the entire entry for the each item rather than just the author or the title. So for example, let's say I wanted to look up Polish genealogy. You'll see that I get results from these other libraries as well as from here at the State Library. Library use only means you cannot request it to go to another library. You cannot take it out. At the moment, some things are going to show up that way, even if they normally circulate, because the borrowing from another library is turned off at the moment. But we can go into one of these listings and you'll see here at the front, it tells you that it's a book, and I'll show you some that are audiobooks or other things later. It gives you the title, the author, the publisher, the date. Right now, this is set to sort by relevance. I can switch this so that it's going by date, and the most recent thing is first. This is something here where it says this record is not available. That's a quirk of having parts of this turned off because of the lack of interlibrary loan. But this is nice because if you're looking for something recent, it's nice that you can sort this way so that you're looking at the more recent ones first. But let's go back to relevant. But sometimes relevance is nicer when you're less concerned about the date. So let's take a look at this one that's here in the library. And a lot of times they pull a little picture, which is handy. So let's talk a little about cataloging. We use the Dewey Decimal System here. Some of the university libraries use Library of Congress. Those are the two biggest systems for classifying books. It will tell you where the book is. So this tells you it's out on our regular stacks. Nobody has it checked out. And this is the call number. one of the interesting things you can do is if you click on the call number, it shows you what's on the same shelf. These are the books either side. And you can see some of these are library use only, so you'd have to come into the library to use them. And a lot of our catalog is library use only. They're books that are rare or fragile. So you'll see how when I searched Polish genealogy, it was finding those words in the whole record, the title, this whole description. This is the table of contents. And then here's what you can now, when you get into this, you can search by subject. And the difference between subject and keyword is this. There are two things. One is the keyword looks anywhere in the record, whereas the subject is just going for the things that it's been classified as a subject. The other thing is the keyword looks for those exact words, and it's free form, whereas these subjects are standardized. And they follow a pattern that's set out, and it's basically it's a limited it's a control, they call it controlled vocabulary. And so you get these are listed, and I'll show you here. This is the book of Dewey Decimal subject headings. And so what it does, and it's a little hard to see, but it will list out the acceptable subject headings, and each lower division. Here's the Library of Congress version. This may be a little easier to see. So for example, I opened up to this one. And so if you were looking for, it would be New England, the geographic area, social life and customs, what you're looking at, to 1775, the date. And so that's a standard format. And it would be the same for anything. They go through what's the accepted spelling of a word if it's got more than one. Political divisions, I'm not a cataloger. I know enough to get myself in trouble, basically. The other thing to note, and this is why you will still want to check the catalog. Almost all of our genealogy, here, let me blow this up a bit so you can see it. No, it's not working. There we go. Genealogy is at 929 as the call number. And that's what's before the period. After the period, you get subdivisions. And the number is on one line, and then this starting with A is on the next line. And you'll notice the A is for the author's first name. And then you have a number that's assigned to the author, and then the F is for the first word in the title that's not the or an. And then you have the year of publication. So again, you can look at this one. Let's see if I can get this so you can see it. So you have 025.49. 025 is books about cataloging. And then C for the author Chan. And then this was done in 2005. So that shows you what that is. And what happens here at the State Library, let's do another one because I know this is a problem. So for Irish genealogy, we've got one that's, and actually I'm going to restrict this to just here, so it'll be even more dramatically annoying for you. So we have 1072M R D, and so these books are spread out amongst the our 107 or 929s on multiple shelves. And so you can, unfortunately, because of the depth of our collection and having the author's first initial, the first letter of the author's last name is a variable, things may not be on the same shelf. So that's one reason you'll want to look at the catalog and not just go to, oh, I saw an Irish genealogy book here the other day, and so I'm going to look here and be done with it. You'll want to look at the catalog. Just because I know people will ask this MSCC, this is a program among a bunch of the libraries in the state, the big ones, Colby, Bates, Bowdoin, the University of Maine at Orono, and us, that this is the copy that no, we will not discard without talking. Our cataloger would deal with their catalogers to make sure it's okay to discard a last copy in the state. It's a shared collection. It's the Maine State something, Maine shared collection something. But that's what that means. So, so anyhow, let's go back to the difference between keyword and subject. Let's go back here. So as I said, the keyword is pulling Polish and genealogy out of the entire record, whereas the subject with controlled vocabulary, here we have Poland genealogy. And if we click on this, it will bring up the number of books we have with anything that has Poland hyphen genealogy as the subject. So there are 3 of them. Or if we go back, Europe, Eastern genealogy. Looks like there's just the one. But that's the difference between a subject and a keyword. Does that make sense to everybody? That, you know, one is free form, looking through the whole record, and one is very controlled descriptions that are consistent from one library to another in what they put in. Couple other things to show you. Sometimes a book has an alternate title. So, How to Trace Your Family Tree in Eastern Europe, in case somebody only remembers the subtitle. Other things this will tell you, it will tell you how many pages it is. Because sometimes, I don't know about you, but I've occasionally ordered a book and I hadn't looked at this, and it comes and it's like a 40-page pamphlet, and I was expecting a 400-page book. They'll tell you if there are illustrations. A lot of times our cataloger puts in the table of contents, and this shows you the sections in the book. This ISBN number is usually on the back of the book. With the barcode. And it's a good way, it's for each edition of the book. So if you're looking for a specific edition, that's one way to find it. What will happen though, like if you're looking for something like Shakespeare's Hamlet, most editions of that will have a different ISBN, so you're not going to worry about that. But if you're like, if you have a kid in college who needs a specific edition for a class to make sure it's the same as everybody else's, the ISBN will do that. It's handy, as you know, particularly if something's been translated, it can be a good way to make sure you're getting the right book. And our catalog is now pulling some information from other places, so Goodreads, and so on. As I said, it is saying search Maine Cat here. And if we search Maine Cat, what it's doing is you will now see, here are some other, you know, there was one circulating copy in URSUS, but you'll see here that several other libraries have a circulating copy. And so in normal times, you would be able, you'll notice the request button isn't here at the moment, but in normal times, there'd be a button up here that would say request this book. And so anytime you see you know, if you look here and this said it's out, try searching Maine Cat and see if somebody else has a copy, because you know the copy coming from Curtis or Lisbon would be just as good as our copy. So as I said, it's a little disrupted because we don't have full interlibrary loan services at the moment. We're actually still in the process of getting the books back to the library they belong to that were caught in the system when everything shut down at the end of March. And we just started last week getting those books back in place. So that's where we are on that. You can, if you're like me and geeky, you can go into the full display. This is the entire bibliographic record that gives you all sorts of details. And as you can see, you have to really be a cataloger to get the most out of this. I know that I can figure out most of this, but I'm not, you know, I had 2 cataloging classes, and that's the end of what I've got. But if you wanted this for some reason, it's there. Next week in this time slot, I'm going to talk about WorldCat, which is the next step up from using Maine Cat to search for something. So let's do a keyword here. So if I put in manuscript as a keyword, we get a lot of entries. What's interesting, if you put in manuscripts, you get a different number of entries. So when you're looking for something that is a noun like that, you know, like if you're looking for, let's go in here and go into paleography. One of the things to do is to go to the subjects and scroll backwards and forwards. There we go. And see what other subject headings there are. Or in the case of, let's go back further. Here, let's do Slovakia genealogy. This gives you an idea. Yeah, there's one book in the system. But what can happen is it is worth looking at these variations to make sure that you're catching stuff. Because, for example, if the description for this Eastern European genealogy book didn't happen to mention the word Poland, because it's not pulling up Polish, it's only pulling up Poland, you would want to check here and see if there's anything, and again, it's just the one book. But what if we do a keyword on, let's do Massachusetts. We'll go with this one. And you see here, it's suggesting these. And so I would take a look at this and see, okay, I want to look at Boston. I want to look at periodicals. I want to look at sources. And here I go, I better talk to our cataloger because those aren't helpful when they've misspelled genealogy. So I need to leave that up so I remember to show that to our cataloger, because if that's in our, she can't change others, but if this is one of our books, yeah, she can change our copy and flag it for the other catalogers involved. So what happens with this is we maintain our own catalog, but it's integrated with the other catalogs. And as you can see, this one, when it says local use only, that's essentially, it's usually meaning it just doesn't circulate at all. Some local use only do actually circulate, but we won't ship them to another library via interlibrary loan. But if you have a card with us and come in, you can take it out. That vocabulary is not as controlled as it should be. But it will tell you the difference between things here and let's do as a keyword, Martha Ballard, and hit search. So here we have different things. We've got an ebook and a book and a computer file. Here's an audiobook of A Midwife's Tale, and see how they've got, and here's a video. So you can restrict things. I'm just looking to see. We want one that's not picked in press. Maybe it's this one. No. So you can see that the Marine Museum has a copy as does the Winslow. Let me go back and do it just in hours because I want to show you one particular thing here. So again, you see you have the edited version that Picked and Press put out. Why is, last time I tried this, it came up. Here we go. Here it is. See how this says manuscript? This is the entry, actually for the microfilm version of the original diary. And even that's kept in the safe. But as you can see, this tells you where something is, and this tells you you're going to have to ask for this from the reference or circulation desk. So if we go to Ballard family, come on. And again, you can see that there are several books. And one of the things our cataloger has been very good about, about is if there are very frequent names in a genealogy, they will put them in here in the subject. And so it's the last name and family is the subject heading for a family history. So you would look for, as this says, the Hobart family, the Ballard family, Littlefield family. So yeah, that's basically how you, and the other thing to remember before I finish and open this to questions, this is one of the things to know is that unlike Ancestry and the other genealogy databases, on this one, on a library catalog, generally spelling counts. You know, it is not, these do not have a back end that is picking up both forms of Stephen or different spellings of Catherine the way Ancestry does. Does that make sense to everybody? That this is, you know, these are meant for modern minds, not the way we're looking at older records that have lots of spelling variations. These will have the spelling that's on, like for a book like this, it will have what's on the title page. Rather than what is, you know, and so they will take this information on a printed book from the title page directly. So if something is misspelled on the title page, that will be how it is in the catalog. Although in that case, you may get it with a different spelling for the subject. So, wildcards. I actually don't know on this one. There is this limit and search the source. So for example, if I wanted things in French, and it says nothing matching, but let's put in a different family name. Let's put in and see if we get, why did that, oops, hit the wrong thing. So now, and this is a case, this is interesting, this is actually down in our map room. I presume because it's a big chart. And so if we go to the subject, there's only the one. But for something like this, you might want only things in French. So you can limit the search. You can limit year of publication. For example, if you're looking for something with computers, you may want to go into the limit and limit it to things that were published in the last 10 years. So that's the overview of the catalog. Oops, I did. Oh yeah, thanks, Karen. Let's pull this up and I'll reshare my screen. Yeah, you can go in and play with this if you're like me and a real geek. But sometimes doing something like this can help with figuring out what to look for. You know, what's the vocabulary they're using? For example, not to get political about anything, but over the last 5 years, there's been a real debate about what subject heading you should use, Library of Congress should use for people who are in the US without their full paperwork. And do you call them illegal aliens? Do you call them undocumented migrants? You know, and so there are some things that get a little touchy, but because it's controlled vocabulary, you need to make sure you're asking the right question when you're doing a subject heading, which is why I tend to do keywords, because it's a little more flexible. Minerva's pretty much the same, and as is MaineCat. If you can use one, if you're comfortable with URSUS, you can use Minerva. It's run by the same people, literally. It's a historic way. I mean, they have different oversight committees, but the back end computer people in the office run them. Minerva is the equivalent of URSUS, but it's mostly public libraries here in Maine. And so it's all the town library, or many of the town libraries. It's like, Maine has 216 public libraries, I think, and about 100 of them are in Minerva. Several are in a system called Mills and Balsam, but they're small libraries. All of the big ones, Portland, South Portland, Bangor, Lewiston, Auburn, Curtis in Brunswick, and so on, are in either Minerva or MaineCat, or Minerva or URSUS, and so they filter into MaineCat. So it's a little complicated, and it's historic. It's coming out of how things were cobbled together to start with before people really realized how much computers were going to change our life. And I think looking back, the people who put it together would probably do some things differently if they could go back in time. But they can't. So, okay. So let me stop screen sharing for real this time. Any questions at this point?
BJ, do you want to just kind of briefly talk about the difference between authorized headings and reference headings? Because I'm sure you'll explain it far better than I possibly could.
Not really. It's more than I was planning to do today. But a lot of why I wanted to do this was just the keyword versus subject. because I talked to several people recently where that's been something they didn't understand. And so that's why I decided to do this, is I really wanted to get the subject versus keyword that you're searching in URSUS straight in people's minds. Does that make sense? I may talk a little more about some of that next week when I cover WorldCat, because there are some differences in how WorldCat works. And one of the things, and one reason I'm doing WorldCat as well as what I did today, our system doesn't have a good way to keep a list of books you want, whereas WorldCat has a system for that, and you can export bibliographies, which is a very handy feature that I wish ours did. And I've asked for it, but it hasn't gone anywhere.
I
So
have a
that would be,
question. Sorry.
sure.
I have this fear that all my genealogy books could go into a dumpster after I'm gone. And I'm trying to figure out what would be the best way. Some books, I think maybe the library, either Maine State or the local libraries, would be interested in. What's the best way to provide for that? I mean, whether or not a library would be interested in a certain type of book. Like, for example, I have Martha Ballard book also, and
Yeah. I'd say contact your local library, start with them. Just because at this point, we really are running out of room. That's what you're going to find at most libraries. Depending where you live, it may actually be a historical society that's better. If they've got any kind of small library, they may have more need for that kind of thing. It's a real balance, because we want a complete collection, but at the same time, I'm down to counting just about every shelf of space. And what people don't realize is when they donate books, there's an awful lot of work. You see that cataloging. There's an awful lot of work behind the scenes before we can put a book on the shelf. Now, what we do is if we are given books and we don't want them, we do offer them to the other libraries in the state before we put them into a book sale. And librarians can say, yes, we'll take it, and we put it on the van to go out to them when the van service is running. But yeah, I would say start with, if there's a place that knows you, start there. And the other thing is realize that sometimes the best thing that happens when you give a book to the library is they sell it at their used book sale, because the $5 or $10 they get for the book is more useful in the long run than a third copy of something. I know when I was out at the Belfast Library, those of you who live here in Maine, you know that book Maine Beautiful that has the green cover? We must have had close to a dozen copies of that in the building in one place or another. And I culled a whole bunch of them. Yeah, there's Brenda saying she's building stuff up at West Paris. So she would be the sort of, if we were given something and sent it out to, there's a librarian email list that we would send out and say, we have these 10 titles. Let us know if you want one of these. And people like Brenda would grab them up. We generally do not have a problem getting rid of genealogy books if they don't fit our collection. Which is why I tend to be, pretty quick to take them, because I know I can find them a home. Of Of course, I also at the moment have my computer up off the table so that it's not looking at a weird angle at me, with 4 books of genealogy of the Gagnon family, which is why I chose that because I haven't gotten them upstairs to our cataloger. They've been sitting in my office for way too long. But yeah, I'm at the point where I'm taking most genealogy books because if I can't use it here at the library, I can find somebody to take it. And what I'm working at building up right now, especially, is French Canadian stuff. If you've got good French Canadian genealogies that you don't want on your bookshelf anymore, send them my way, because that's something that we are somewhat lacking on. I mean, it's not that we have nothing, we just don't have as much as I'd like. So any other questions? Okay, let me end the recording.